I'm here in front of Yamaha's CK88, and it's a stage piano aimed definitely at either semi-professional or professional musicians. On the one hand, it's combining elements of, say, Nord's design and product philosophy that really has been centered around three main instruments: the acoustic piano, e-piano, and organ. And a number of Nord's products has really got those three user experiences front and center in terms of how they've been designed and executed on. Then on the other hand, we've got products from the likes of Kawai, Roland, Casio, and others that have tried to produce low-cost stage pianos that bring in some of the features of higher-end stage pianos such as the RD2000 or the Farmer RD88 and integrate them into speaker-enabled lightweight instruments that give you 3 or 4 zones. But what Yamaha's done here is kind of combine them with an interesting twist. Not only does it include a fully redesigned user interface, which I really like, but it also includes a tactile control of a very robust Hammond organ simulator. It reminds me a lot of the organ sim that you can find in Roland's Phantom 08, but the main difference here is there are physical controls here, whereas the Roland is a touchscreen control. Now, in spending some time with this instrument and getting to know it, there are 3 things that really jump out at me as being very well executed. This is probably one of the best Yamaha user experiences I think I can remember. Even though at first glance there appears to be quite a few buttons and knobs, which might be intimidating to some, all of those buttons and knobs are actually laid out in a very logical way. Every time you think you should be reaching for something in a particular place, or every time you want to be able to turn something on or off or select between a parameter, it's right there and very obvious. The second thing I really like about this instrument is how they have managed the effects side of things. So often, to really utilize the full power of an onboard effects engines, you need to be diving into layer upon layer of menu inside an operating system, and it seldom feels intuitive. Of course, once you get there and once you understand how to navigate and operate and control those effects, it's usually just fine. But with very few exceptions, there is a pretty steep learning curve involved in understanding how the effects chain is programmed and conceived of, and then how you can get in there and manipulate it. With this, it's very clear. You've got a filter, you've got an effects envelope control, then you've got a drive, which is kind of an amplifier sim, and then 2 digital effects engines. And they're all sitting right there and all super easy to manipulate. And every time you save a preset into your live set, that gets saved with it, and you're ready to manipulate for another patch or another live set setting. Same goes with your EQ as well as your reverb settings. Then of course the third thing is definitely going to be the organ sim. Everything you would possibly want on an organ simulator is right here. Obviously it doesn't get into quite the level of nuance that you get when you access, say, a top-end Hammond VST or even one of the more premium industry emulators, but it covers 90% of what you would expect. You've got your percussion settings, your vibrato and chorus settings, your rotary control, as well as octave control. Now, even though octave control is universal, it happens to be beside the organ, but it does affect the entire machine. People who play organ on 88-note keyboards will know frequently that you're often having to do, or you would prefer to kind of shift the octave up and down depending on what you're playing. So it's nice to have that sitting right there as well. Now, something I'm less used to is the idea that a lot of these instruments and patches are kind of locked off, and any editability is going to come through the use of effects rather than getting into the sort of generation of the tone itself and being able to manipulate parameters there. But when you consider the price point of this instrument, of course, you're not going to get workstation level editability or even VST level editability on something that really is going to be running in the mid $1,000 to $2,000 range. Another aspect which is really sort of just a result of the price point is the key bed that they've chosen to put in the full-size 88. It's the GHS. Now, the GHS has received some improvements undoubtedly over the last couple years, but I still find that the action feels just a little on the sluggish side compared to some of the other competitors in this price range. But action, as we all know, is an incredibly personal choice. And if you're used to the Yamaha universe of products, this is probably not a negative for you. It's also got a very handy double 1/4 inch input as well as Bluetooth input. So plenty of ways to use this as a bit of a home base, especially if you are operating on a gig, need to be playing background music, or if you want to be bringing in some other type of instrument and kind of mixing using this before sending to a board. So now let's explore through playing a few different areas and sounds of the CK88. And finally, some organ. So in addition to all of your standard stage piano sounds, including the Hammond stuff we were just listening to, the pipe organ patches that are included in here, as well as some of the other orchestral patches such as the brass, woodwinds, guitars, and strings, are quite rich and very usable, particularly I would say if you were in a band setting or you're burying them or layering them behind something else. Maybe not quite at a level where they could stand alone in a recording setting, but definitely in a live setting, very, very usable. So here are my final takeaways from the CK88. First of all, I think because the organ is almost the centerpiece of this instrument, I think the 61 note version is probably going to see even more popularity than the 88 note version. Not only are you going to get that spring-loaded, more waterfall type action, so it's going to be a little more natural for people who are really focused on the Hammond playing, but because the GHS isn't going to be winning hearts and minds for its action on its own, I think there are probably other stage pianos out there that are going to cater to people really focused on the tactile touch of the instrument rather than the guts up here. And I could see this being quite an interesting product for people who maybe are using this in church or sacred settings, gospel groups, funk and R&B, as well as jazz fusion. And that's a pretty big group of people. Anyway, thank you so much for checking out this quick look at the CK88. If you've enjoyed what you saw, please consider subscribing and stick around the channel and check out all of the hundreds of other reviews that we've done on acoustic and digital pianos. We would love to have you as a regular viewer. My name is Stu Harrison. It's been Merriam Pianos on YouTube, and we will see you again soon.